I'm gonna kill myself with all this stuff here. Intro take 2. Welcome. I'm Kyle, and this is Your Falcon Wins Hobbies, and this is my 1988 Ford F-150, nicknamed the Heretic. Picked up this truck from my grandfather because it needed a radiator, and I wanted a project truck. Turned out it needed a whole lot more, and the scope creep got out of hand. Today we are continuing on with the Mustang II conversion kit, going to box in the frames, and hopefully by the end of this video, golly, I got to plan out the video. By the end of this video, the front wheel should be installed because actually my wheels are actually being shipped. So let's get to it. All right. To pick up where we left off on the last video, I got this little section of plate put in. It's in there, it's kind of tacked in place, and because of the oddball shape of the frame, I put a tack and I try to pull the plate into shape. There's my clear safety glasses. They ain't very clear. So what I've been doing is kind of fitting it as I go along. May not be the best way to do it, but it's the way I know how to do it. Again, one thing about this channel, and if you're watching this hoping to learn something, hopefully you can learn from my mistakes. I will try to point out the mistakes I make while I'm going through this process. Alrighty, now I'm back in here. But yes, it's a matter of fit, fettle, clamp into place, turn on the weld machine, tack it in, fettle some more. I got some holes I need to plug up on the frame too, but I don't know exactly how I'm going to go about doing that just quite yet. I need a grinding disc, not a cutoff wheel. Oh, I didn't even need that. I had a plug-in grinder down here with a hard disc on it. Okay, yeah. That's why you try to do big projects in one go, so that way you don't forget. All right. Apparently paint was still sticky when I did that one. Hammer, hammer, hammer. Hard object with mass anywhere. There we go. Yeah. That would hurt if I stabbed myself. So, what was I talking about? It doesn't matter. Usually on big projects like this, you would like to do it all at once, not take any drastic breaks. But given my work schedule, that's kind of hard to do. I really hate this style of grinder. I don't like the push button on the side. I prefer the paddle. So that way, quick release. It doesn't lock the motor in. Surprised they even still make those. I only bought that grinder about a year ago. Closer. But as much grinding and whatnot as I got to do, I'd rather have the corded grinder than the battery operated one, because you'll wear batteries out. And charging them and discharging them at that rate, you'll end up ruining the batteries. I shouldn't do that on the rat support. This really doesn't even need to be there. Let me get these magnets out of the way so I get rid of the, don't have all this grinding dust on them. I hate grinding dust and metal shavings on magnets for some reason. But yet I just leave them right there. Okay, let's put that there. And then I'll be able to finish tacking this in place. And the good thing about doing this little section right here, I'm going to mirror it on the other side, obviously. But the good thing about doing this little section right here is this is where the cross member welds to. And it is recommended that when you do this, per the instructions that Helix gives you, is to box. They recommend a full box all the way down. Because you're going to do, if you're going to do this much, you might as well do as much as you can. But given the materials I have and my own impatience, I'm only going to go back up to the firewall. I think I'm going to leave it like open up through here, just so that way there's a nice crumple zone type area. But boxing it all the way up to the firewall is going to be ideal. But once I get this box section in place, I got my tires I'm going to run. So I'm going to mock it up in the fender well, let y'all see that, lower the vehicle into place to kind of get it looking correct. And then I'll start doing my measurements and getting the cross member in place. That's the plan. And yes, I have to talk myself through the plan, otherwise nothing ever gets done. All right, what was I doing? Because that is such a precarious spot. Let's see if I can get that. That's bright. Bright, I can't see it. All right, let's see what I can find. All right, here's this one. There's probably some professional fabricator accidentally stumbling across this video screaming at me through the screen right now. This is not a safe position at all. But, I mean, the truck's not going anywhere. It's supported. It's just... Well, I'm going to turn the camera off because this is going to take a little bit to get this settled into place. Then I can get this mic out of the way. Alright, you see me with the piece of cardboard. I'm sitting there mocking it up on these little empty voids. The reason why there's empty voids on the top side is because the frame rails are not even. They're actually wider on the bottom than they are on the top. And one of the things I have picked up watching a lot of YouTube videos and whatnot, there's something called the dirty finger trick, where you put the card or your paper on top of the seam where you want and rub your dirty finger across it, and then you have a some sort of witness mark to go against. Okay, something of note. The Helix Mustang II conversion kit that I got, I purchased the wrong one initially. I got the 2-inch drop kit. And what they don't tell you in any description, I imagine if I scoured forums and try to deep dive into some other videos and builds and whatnot, it'd probably come up in conversation. But the 2-inch drop kit is nowhere near correct for this truck, because a standard conversion kit drops the truck or lowers your ride height 6 inches already. So unless you are slamming this thing on the ground and bagging it, there's no reason to purchase the 2-inch drop kit, in my opinion. Even though this is the standard kit, and by the end of the video, I think the stance is going to look pretty good. But there's certain few things I wish I knew before I purchased the kit. Not only that, in the beginning of the video, talking about mistakes being made, mistakes get made, and I'll go over that as they come along. But there's about a month-long process of me fixing mistakes. Alrighty, now I'm on to the finicky part of this. Did some welding, did some grinding, cleaned everything up. Now, spindle center line is 7 inches from this bar here. Measure 7 inches. Now, from there, you go 1 inch forward towards the radiator, and then 2 1/8 inch back. And what I'm doing is because it's easier for me to mark up here on top of the frame rail. Ooh, the rain. I got me a plumb bob here, just going straight down across that frame rail. Yeah. And then I'm going to mark it just so that way I have something on this face here to reference. I can do the other side. There's a lot of measuring involved at this stage. Boxing the frame is just a necessity, so that way you have something to weld the cross member to. That one should be right there. Tape measure, sanity check. That is way off. Actually, that ain't off at all. But because this is a Ford and nothing is square or straight or anything, really the only thing you have to go off of is to find the two flattest parts on the frame rail and weld a box tube like I did. So that way you can level out the frame. And then everything else is kind of up in the air. You kind of have to just make it work. Go a little bit more. Makes me so happy. I didn't screw it up yet. That's a bad yet to have. Actually, I do need to cut this over just a wee bit. Now, at this point, I was pretty happy with myself. Things were welded in. Shouldn't have been. That was one of my first mistakes I made, was actually welding the cross member in early, because it just makes it more of a pain in the butt to cut out when you have to. Uh, Here in a second, you'll see me hold up the spring tower. And it didn't dawn on me at first, but there was this weird lingering feeling I had for a couple of days uh, before I realized what my mistake was. And that's when I realized I still had the cross member too low, which again raises the ride height of the truck. And yeah, you see me marking up the spring tower there, which I do have a pretty decent angle mark on it to compensate for the angle on the frame. I did at least get that correct to a certain degree. Uh, but you see me just holding it down there so freaking low, and I've never seen a spring tower that low. I've never seen a upper control arm sit that low, because the upper control arm sits on the spring tower. So it took forever for me to realize what I was doing wrong. I had to cut the cross member out twice. At least the second time I cut it out, it was only tacked in place. But I had to readjust myself, readjust the jacks, and I don't know if you see them in any of the previous clips, or they might show up here in a second. But the tires did finally come in that I was going to run on the front, or am going to run on the front. And I put it in the wheel well, and I got down low even with it, and I was like, you know what? The truck still sits way too high. And I started pulling measurements off the tire to the fender well and trying to figure out where I went wrong at. And one of the things, like I mentioned before, is I bought the 2-inch drop kit, so I had the wrong spindles. The wrong spindles, or the 2-inch drop spindles, line up a little bit differently as far whenever you're mocking them in place for some reason. I haven't quite figured that out. It might just be my imagination. But yeah, getting the right spindles, which was more money I had to spend on this project. But anyway, getting the right spindles in place was allowing me to mock it up correctly. And afterwards, I had my stepdad help me out, because I think where we pick up at later is messing with the steering rack. But I had my stepdad help me mock things up before I was finally happy with the arrangement. And it took a while to get there. It took about 3 iterations, and basically I had to lower or put my notch in the cross member about another 4.5 inches, so that way my spring tires would be, top of the spring tires would be up above the frame, and everything will sit correctly in place. How much longer do I have on this clip? I can't do voiceovers forever. Alright. Now, excuse the heater noises because it is just a little bit chilly and I'm trying not to chill out of the shop. But, the steering rack, I'm going to have to come to later. I know about the position it needs to be in. We got some clearance issues we got to address. We got some angle issues that need to be addressed. But looking at everything else, we did a dry mock-up with one of the springs and shocks. Looking at the travel on everything, I'm going to go ahead and weld everything in. And if it's wrong, I just scrap the truck. Because I don't think, after I weld everything in this time, I don't think there's any coming back. It's going to have a really low ride height. But right now, everything seems to be pretty freaking kosher. Like I said, we did a dry mock-up with the spring and shock. Made all that look pretty good. We got some fine adjustment we can use on those coilovers to get our ride height set, you know, dead nuts perfect. all this cross bracing is going to stay in here for the time being. Well, take that back. This one will come out after I weld everything in, because after the cross member's done and it's sitting on its own weight on the tires, I gotta put the short block in here and figure out the position on it in relation to the oil pan, the cross member, and everything else. Not only that, I got a little bit more boxing in on the frame I got to do back towards the rear. I at least want to get it back boxed in all the way to where the excuse me, where the I'll give it here in a second, mid plate slash transmission adapter plate is going to go. But I think that's where we're at this point. So shit, what was I going to say? Cue the time lapse. And for the first time in a couple of months, the truck is finally back on the ground. The camera angle is weird. But yeah, that's pretty much what it's going to look like. I got some drop shackles I'm going to do on the rear. Just to kind of help with the rake situation. I got some adjustments still I can do in the front to raise it up if I so choose. It's not a very tall tire. It's not a very short tire. It's like a 27.2 inch. It's a find my numbers. Yeah, 235, 55, 17. But depending on who makes it, they vary a little bit in height. But from Tire Rack, where I bought these from, I have to get some WD-40 clean these up. Where I bought them from Tire Rack on their website, it gives you an inch dimension when you go to specs, and it's 27.2 inches. So that ain't too bad. It means my spindle height is pretty much right at 14 inches. Gives you something to work at. Everything's in here nice. Some of the next steps will be getting this little thing mocked up and put the mounts on it. I gotta cut some of these cross members out. In fact, I can probably cut most of them out. I just ain't gonna do it today. Get the engine mocked in there, and then I'll go back to worrying about the steering rack. I think that's about the way I want to do it, because I am going to have to get a new steering column, because that entire assembly's messed up on the inside. Actually, now that it's leaning forward, I kind of want to sit and see what it feels like. Steering wheel's still way too freaking close. Gotta figure something out when I do my roll cage, because that bar is going to come all the way down here. It usually goes all the way down. Maybe I can take that out and just leave my parking brake assembly where it's at. I don't know, because I am going to get one of those, not necessarily made for the truck, but universal enough DOM roll bar kits from Summit to do all this, and then I'll start putting the dash back together, because the hot rod drag week, sick week, the classes I would qualify for and kind of want to stay within the rule set, got to have a factory dash, or factory-esque dash, I believe. So that's all going to go back in. I am going to go back on what I originally thought. I'm going to get a different gauge cluster. I was thinking about getting the Sniper or Holly digital display Duke-Mahickey and just build a bezel and everything else, put it right here. But I like the look of analog gauges, and it fit with this truck. So not only that, it's cheaper. A little bit more work, but it's cheaper. And they do make a clustered, I think Dakota Digital is the one I'm looking at. Yeah, you can wire it in with the Terminator ECM too, so that way you have your digital to analog input for speedometer, all your temperatures and things like that. So that'll work. But in the meantime, let's take one more gander. Truck is back on the ground.